Happy Jade. Morning da, good morning pawb, croeso cynnes I chi gyd yma. Welcome to the Planning, Taxi Licensing and Rights of Way Committee, held today, Thursday, 6th of August. We have a full agenda before us this morning. I'd like to welcome all the officers who are going to be taking us through it, our members of the public who have joined us in the chamber and those joining us at home. And as always, a welcome to the councillors in the chamber and councillors who are joining us online. Summed ymlaen, agenda please, apologies and the roll call. Jade, diolch.
Councillor Gareth D. Jones.
Yma.
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Sian Cox.
Here.
Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Fleur France Morgans.
Present.
Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Ed Jones.
Present.
Councillor Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
Councillor Karina Kenyon Wade. Councillor Carl Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Gareth Pugh.
Present.
Councillor David Selby.
Present.
Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson. Councillor Hugh Williams.
Yma.
And we have apologies from Councillor Edwin Roderick.
Diolch, thank you, Jade. Moving on, item number 2, minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 8th of July. Members, if you could turn to page 6 of your pack and look at the minutes there. We have been contacted and we were going to change the minutes to include the planning ecologist advised that he had received a 1 kilometre full grid reference, which could have been recorded outside of the development site area. However, was satisfied with the information submitted and the industry standard mitigation measures for a development of this type. That will replace that he had reviewed the 20-year bird data. And in addition to that, the planning officer noted that there had been no objections received from the statutory bodies. We're going to replace that with the planning officer noted that a number of statutory consultees had predominantly raised no objections. So those will be changed. So with those amendments, can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Thank you, Councillor Deb. All happy? Take it by your silence. Yeah, so with those additions, we will record those minutes as true and accurate. Thank you. Moving on to the meat of the meeting, the planning applications, declarations of interest. A, to receive any declarations of interest from members relating to items to be considered on the agenda. Councillor Fleer, I have a hand up.
Hello, can I declare an interest in agenda item 4.2, please?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Ed?
In item 4.4.
Thank you. I think that, yeah, everyone happy. B, to receive members' requests that a record be made of their membership of a town or community councils where discussion has taken place of matters for consideration of this committee. That's a legacy, Councillor Ed, or do you want to speak again? Thank you. To receive declarations from members of the committee that they will be acting as local representative in respect of an individual application being considered by the committee. Councillor Deb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 4.4, 25.07644, meteorological mass, 350 metres south of Randangle, Riditon.
Thank you, Councillor Deb. Good. Moving on to the final one, to note the details of members of the County Council who are not members of the committee who will be acting as local representative in respect of an individual application being considered by the committee. Councillor Glynn, please.
Yes, I'll be speaking on 4.2, Councillor Gareth.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Peter, are you with us? Councillor Peter Lewis? He might be joining us later, but we will note that he will be talking on application 4.5. Thank you, Jade. Planning applications for consideration by the committee today. As mentioned, we have a comprehensive agenda 4.1 updates. Members, there's a big pack circulated yesterday, some 130 plus pages. Can I confirm that you've all had opportunity to read the pack and that you're all happy? I take it by your silence and no hands that we all are, so we're happy to move on to our first application. 26//0255/FUL Glenhavrin All Hold Llanidloes Powys. Now, this was going to be taken by Aled, who unfortunately at the last minute has been taken away on a family emergency. So Gemma,
Lorraine, sorry.
Lorraine. So Lorraine will be taking us through this. Lorraine, floor's yours. Diolch. Just bear with us, please. We're just struggling to share the screen.
Oh. Yeah. Share. Okay. Thank you. This application is for the erection of a replacement wind turbine with all associated infrastructure and works, with a blade hub height of 31.5 metres and a blade tip height of 46 metres. The site being Glenhavrin, Old Hall, Llanidloes. So here is the application site. You can see the town of Llanidloes in the northeast corner there, and the site is here. This location plan shows the site. It has an existing wind turbine there, and it would be on the same footprint as that existing wind turbine. The green horizontal line here highlights the public right of way, which is a bridle way, and it runs adjacent to the site. So the proposal is for a replacement turbine. It's on the same footprint. The impact, so therefore the impact on the green infrastructure is minimal. The existing turbine measures 24.7 metres to the hub and 34.3 metres to the blade tip, whereas the proposed, as mentioned earlier, will be 31.5 metres to the hub and 46 metres to the tip. Therefore, an increase of 6.75 metres to the hub height and 11.6 metres to the blade tip height. The MOD have been consulted on the proposed turbine as it is located within a designated low flying area and raised no concerns subject to condition. The turbine will make use of the existing concrete base and also the existing grid connection infrastructure. The next few slides deal with it in terms of landscape. On the top of the slide, you can see an actual photo of the existing turbine, and on this one below, you can see what the proposed turbine would look like from the same viewpoint. And again, from near the Old Hall. This is from public access land south of the site. You can just see it in the distance there, and down here, obviously. Then is a local road north of Old Hall, You can see it there and there. This is viewpoint 5, which is Glan and Nant. This is from the public road by Llyn Clywedog. This is a viewpoint taken from Glyndwr's Way, which is east of Llanidloes. These show the viewpoint locations. You can see obviously the proposal site in the middle there, and those last photos have covered these areas. This slide shows again the viewpoint locations, visual receptors and recreational routes, such as the Llyn Clywedog Reservoir and the Wye Valley Walk. I'll work out which is the Wye Valley Walk, apologies for that, presumably that one. Oh no, turquoise one, beg your pardon, here, and that one being the Prince Llewellyn Ride Bridleway. This is the viewpoint locations in terms of the existing wind turbines. A number of objections have, public comments have raised concerns about the cumulative impact. This shows the existing turbines against which the cumulative impact should be assessed. There will be ones in the pipeline, but they will have to take this one into account rather than the other way round in terms of cumulative impact. This is the viewpoint locations and visibility of the turbine. This highlights the viewpoint locations along with the theoretical visibility of certain aspects of the proposed turbine. And this is just a slightly more zoomed in version of that. Again, this is the zoomed out version. And a slightly magnified version of the last one. It shows the viewpoints along with existing turbines and wind farms. This slide shows the noise sensitive receptors and predicted noise levels. The noise impact assessment was submitted with the application, and concerns had been raised that certain properties that the dwellings that the noise assessment had assumed were abandoned have turned out not to be abandoned. However, the assessment did include those, assuming that if they were lived in, then they would still be acceptable. So although the assessment has been amended, it had always included the fact that it believed that the turbine would be acceptable in terms of noise at that dwelling, whether it was abandoned or not. So regardless of the occupancy status of that property, it had been included and found to be acceptable by the noise assessment. Here is the site in relation to the public rights of way of the area. Concerns have been raised about the impact upon the rights of way because they were to be used as routes to deliver the equipment to the new turbine. It's said that the time to construct the new turbine is predicted to be 11 days, and the materials will be transported to the site via 2 standard lorries, capable of accommodating 40-foot shipping containers, and it will be then constructed on site. Rights of way Powys Rights of Way requested additional information into how that was going to happen, as did Powys Highways and Welsh Government Highways, and a construction traffic management plan is to be requested by condition, and therefore that alleviates the concerns raised by Powys Rights of Way. So now we've got some site photos. This is the primary access to the site up a right of way. This is heading east. This is heading west. This shows the existing turbine and the right of way access to it. Again, this is facing west. This again is the previously mentioned right of way. This is looking south-southeast from that previous image. This image is in that same place, but looking west. And this is taken from the north of the turbine, looking south at it. This is obviously the existing turbine. And just another image from the public right of way, looking at the turbine. So to conclude the application, the presentation, the officer recommendation is one of approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Lorraine. We do have two speakers on this application. Firstly, I'd like to ask Councillor Glyn Preston. Are you with us, Glyn?
Yes, here with you, Chair.
Good. You have 5 minutes and the time's yours when you're ready.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. I am speaking today predominantly to reflect the views of concerned residents in the area and to re-emphasise some of the points made by a neighbouring community council, that being Llanidloes Without Community Council in this instance. And I've got a number of issues that I think of planning concern to raise. Firstly, regarding noise. The revised noise assessment is pretty central in my view, and in the second consultation response notes, the revised assessment confirms that a valley correction was used. However, even though that valley correction has been applied, the figures don't seem to have changed between the two reports. And so I'd really like an explanation from officers as to what numerical difference that valley correction has been made. And I think this is really, really important because there are some very small margins at play here. So New Bailey House, which is what is the nearest property to the wind turbine, I think standing at something like 480 metres away, there's only a 0.2 decibel margin between the legal thresholds. So the predicted noise levels are set to be 34.8 decibels against a 35 decibel threshold. And I think when the assessments are that close to the limit, members ought to be able to seek reassurances that the assessment is sufficiently robust, particularly when these two assessments, as I say, meant to have had a valley correction put on them, have the same numerical figure. The second is around residential amenity and visual assessment. New Bailey House now is recognised in the noise assessment. However, there are still concerns whether it was properly considered as part of the landscape and visual appraisal. And therefore, before determining this application, I would like officers to clarify whether New Bailey is accepted as a lawful residential dwelling, whether it was assessed as part of the landscape and visual appraisal, whether its residential amenity has been properly considered, and whether members have been provided with representative viewpoints for this location, given that it is the property closest to the wind turbine and the one that is likely to, have the biggest sort of impact on its visual amenity. My third and final point is regarding the sort of public benefits. So the report places significant weight on the larger turbine's ability to generate increased renewable energy, and that very importantly does, very rightly does play an important part of the planning balance. However, in the report, there is little discussion regarding grid constraints and connection capacity, and local residents have questioned whether existing infrastructure is capable of accommodating the increased output. I mean, I think in simple terms, residents want to know that if they're going to have the extra noise and the extra visual impact, whether the public benefit, i.e. more renewable energy generation, is actually going to be able to be capitalized on. Are they going to be able to export this energy to the grid? Because if not, they quite rightly ask the question, why should they have to tolerate the extra noise and visual impact if that isn't guaranteed? So to conclude, Chair, the questions I've raised are around the noise assessment. Is it sufficiently robust? Are we satisfied that all residential receptors have been fully assessed, especially New Bailey, which is very, very close indeed, very, very close to the turbine, but also very, very close in terms of that noise assessment with only a 0.2 decibels off the threshold. And lastly, whether members are satisfied that there is enough information in the pack to demonstrate the public benefits, whether we have absolute confidence that that public benefit can be realised in the form of increased renewable energy generation. Anyway, those are my comments, Chair, and thank you very much for letting me speak today.
Thank you, Councillor Glenn. We have two final speakers, please. Gwyn Humphreys, the agent, and Mr. Rowan Jones, the applicant, who will be sharing the time. So if you'd both like to come up here. Gentlemen, you also have 5 minutes of the time's yours when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you all this morning. My name is Rowan Jones, third generation beef and sheep farmer, farming at Glenhavering, some 4.5 miles outside Lidlois at the top end of the Severn Valley. Hopefully I'd like to give you a little bit of background and reasoning behind what we're proposing. We put our original Endurance 3120 turbine up back in 2014, some 12 years ago now. It was a very popular turbine put up by many farmers at the time. It's been somewhat successful. The biggest issue we had is Endurance went bust only 2 years after we put our turbine in. As a result, we lost all our warranty, after-sale support, availability of parts and spares became an issue, and it soon became uninsurable. We're proposing to replace the existing Endurance turbine with a larger, second-hand, reconditioned Vestas turbine. It's a tried and tested machine from a proven manufacturer, giving us good manufacturer backup and support. The current Endurance turbine is marginally viable, really. It's from a generation and a production point of view, it's been very good, but from and probably the precursor Endurance going at bust, but from a point of view of operational maintenance, service costs and repairs have been extremely high. And as a result, it's likely to be unviable once the government feed-in tariffs end in 8 years' time. Whereas the proposed turbine has the potential to be viable and generating renewable electricity long beyond the end of the feed-in tariffs. We're dealing with some very uncertain times in agriculture at the minute, particularly in line of the government reforms of agricultural support and in continued increasing costs and pressures on profit margins. We're looking at the replacement turbine to be a more viable diversification stream. Our business is a real family business run by myself, my brother Dylan and my wife Gemma. My mother and father are still involved in the business, actively involved in the business on a daily basis in their 70s. Both Dylan and myself have teenage children, some of which are keen farmers. It's a sad state of the agriculture sector, but farming alone would not be able to support the three families. This and other diversifications are essential to ensure the continuation of livestock farming at Glenhavering and to ensure there's a farming business for the next generation to take over in the future. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Gwyn Humphreys. I'm a chartered time planner and I'm here today as Rowan's planning agent. At the outset, it's really important to remember that this application is not for a wind turbine in a new location. Indeed, the principle of a turbine here was established through the planning permission granted on site in 2014. And what is proposed now is the replacement of the existing turbine with a modern and more efficient model on the same site. The proposal, therefore, represents an opportunity for renewable energy to continue to be generated from an established site without introducing wind energy development into a new landscape. In policy terms, the position is very clear. Both Planning Policy Wales, Future Wales and the Local Development Plan, all three are very supportive of renewable energy development, especially where it will aid in farm diversification schemes, as Rowan has outlined. The proposal is very important to the future of his farming business. Importantly, the application has been subjected to detailed technical scrutiny by both the Planning Department officers and consultees. Environmental Protection have raised no objection and confirmed that noise levels remain within accepted limits. Indeed, the officer has recommended that the existing condition on the existing planning permission is carried over to the new planning permission if granted, and we're content the proposal will fall within that restriction. The Council's ecologist has raised no objections. Natural Resources Wales have raised no objection. The Build Heritage Officer has raised that there would be no issues. The Highway Authority raises no objection, and the comments of the Welsh Government Highway Agency are noted. We are in agreement with the recommended condition number 4 in relation to a construction traffic management plan that will cover both highway safety issues as well as issues concerning the public right of way. Finally, the Ministry of Defence has also raised no objection. Having considered the landscape impact, residential amenity, ecology, highways, heritage and aviation matters, officers have concluded that the proposal would result in acceptable effects and that the proposal would comply with the relevant planning policies. In terms of just addressing the points raised by the local member, in terms of noise, the noise consultants have confirmed that the valid correction has been correctly applied. Indeed, it was actually factored into the first report. It just wasn't explicitly stated as being so. And Paul Bufton of the Environmental Protection Team has confirmed that the noise impacts would be acceptable within the current limit. In terms of the submitted landscape visual appraisal, it's considered that this has fully addressed the impacts of the proposed development in accordance with the Council's adopted landscape supplementary planning guidance. And as is noted within the planning officer's report, matters concerning a right of review don't exist in planning law. In terms of public benefits, firstly, as stated, the proposal fully complies with Welsh Government's aims in terms of renewable energy generation, and it certainly meets the goals of the nation in terms of moving towards net zero. It's also confirmed that the grid connection is existing and was put into place at the time of the current turbines installation, and therefore the applicant is confident that there's sufficient infrastructure there to export the necessary electricity to the grid. Members are therefore faced with a proposal that allows for renewable energy to continue to be generated from an established site. It supports a rural farm enterprise, makes efficient use of an existing turbine site and accords with national and local planning policies, and is therefore recommended for approval by officers. For these reasons, I respectfully ask members to support the officer recommendation and grant planning permission today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both very much, diolch yn fawr. Members, that concludes our speakers this morning. As you're getting your hands ready to request to speak, I'll come to Gemma first, and then I'll also come to Lorraine to address the points by Glyn. Councillor Glyn.
Good morning, members. Just to make you aware, since the update report that was published, we have received further representations through this morning and last night, I believe. Predominantly, we do consider that they have been addressed in the update report, but for clarification and transparency, I just want to quickly run through those comments that have been received in that representation. So firstly, the concerns about grid connection. As you'll see in the update report, we have referred to this as being an existing connection, and as we've just heard from the agent and applicant today, we don't consider there's any information before us to say that a grid connection could not be achieved or secured, given that there is that existing connection and that the turbine will be serving the existing farm holding as well. In terms of the control cabinet, there was questions raised about whether this was proposed or to remain as existing. We have received clarification that this is to remain as existing, so there is no new control cabinet being proposed, and that is why there's no plans being put before you today. Officers are satisfied that that doesn't form part of the plans or the description of development before us, so we are satisfied that there is no new cabinet, etc., being proposed. Cumulative, you'll see there is an update section within the update report regarding cumulative impacts. In addition, we are aware of 2 DNS projects that are with PEDU. We understand they have not yet started that formal consultation process, and that is Rulus and Bank D, but they have been considered in terms of landscape, We've obviously heard from officers about the minimal height increase and that there is a baseline of an existing turbine here, so we do not consider that that increase would have a cumulative impact when considering the proposed and consented schemes around. In terms of noise, obviously concerns have been raised here today, but there is addressed within the officer's report, and we have got our noise environmental health officer here today to answer any questions, but subject to conditions, they have no objection to that. And it will be in line with the existing operation of the turbine in terms of the conditions previously approved. An additional comment then has also been received about the premature decommissioning of the turbine. It's not necessarily planning consideration, the option for an applicant to choose to replace a turbine. It would just have to go through that necessary consideration of principal development and the policy. Everything else is then addressed within the update report, but I just wanted to clarify that we have received that additional representation this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch, thank you, Gemma. Lorraine, do you wish to come in now and to respond to anything Gemma's covered?
I don't think so. I think Gemma's covered what I had here.
Good, thank you. Members, over to yourselves. I've got 3 hands, so we'll start with Councillor Karina, then Councillor Carl, and then Councillor Jonathan, please. Councillor Karina.
Oh, thanks very much. This is a new wind turbine, which is going to generate more energy. We are going to need more energy as we get things like heat pumps. I think that's a good thing. We may need 2 to 3 times as much electrical generation capacity as we have now. So that's a good thing. This wind turbine is only just over 11 meters, 11.6 meters higher to the tip than the current wind turbine, and I think 6 to the hub. It's a minimal increase in height with an increase in generation capacity. So I think that's a good thing. As for the cumulative impact of more wind turbines, as I think Lorraine mentioned, it's the other wind turbines possibly being built that will be considered against this one in terms of cumulative impact. I have to say I'm slightly confused about the old belly, new belly noise impact because Old Belly was considered as an empty property and now is, could you please clarify that for me? But apart from that, I'm happy to accept the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to clarify, and I apologise, I can't remember which way round it is, but there are two dwellings. One was mentioned in the noise assessment report as being abandoned. So in a planning term, that means, you know, it's no longer a dwelling. However, so members of the public were concerned and were saying, no, actually, it hasn't been abandoned. Therefore, it does need to be considered within the noise assessment report as a dwelling that may well be impacted on by the noise. So we went back to the noise assessment consultant via environmental health, and he said, no, I have considered it, even though he stated it was abandoned, he had actually considered it as if it were not abandoned. So possibly he just confused things by using that word, said that he had considered it and he did not consider that it would be adversely or unacceptably impacted by the noise. So whilst it was a concern flagged, he had actually ruled that out.
Councillor Karina, content? Can I confirm, was that a proposal or
Yes.
It was a proposal, go with officer recommendation? Thank you. Councillor Carl, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask, does this turbine sit within Llanidloes because I noticed in the pack that they said it doesn't, and Llangerig Community Council have not made a comment as far as I can see.
I think Gemma will look that up now and just get an accurate map. Have you an additional question, Carl?
Just a comment, really. I'm struggling to see why this is brought before us because I think it's an application we should all be supporting, and therefore I'm happy to second Karina's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carl.
Good morning. Yeah, so it falls, from our understanding, within the Community Council for Llangirrig. The neighbouring wards are consulted for wind turbines, but we haven't had a comments from Llangirrig itself.
Can I just
We've
ask
commented, I believe.
one extra question?
Please.
How many objectors did you have towards this application?
In the officer's report, it confirms 18 objecting. And then we have obviously received the additional I referred to yesterday and this morning. So there's 18 demonstrated within the officer's report.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Diolch, Councillor Carl. Councillor Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking the agent and farmer for giving some useful background about this development before we started this discussion and debate, particularly regarding the premature decommissioning reasons for that, which seem reasonable. I'm pleased to hear that no additional infrastructure is required, and it seems as though the existing concrete base is also going to be suitable, so that's going to reduce the impact of this new development. And I take the point that farm profitability, particularly on upland beef and sheep farms, is under significant pressure, and any diversification is welcome. And this has clearly worked for them for over 10 years. And to my mind, the smaller scale renewables, which have less impact on the landscape and are benefiting farms directly, are exactly what we should be going for, as opposed to some of the very large industrial scale wind farms that are proposed for Powys. I'd just like a little bit more background if possible. We have discussed the noise and history of noise at length, I know. Have there been any history of specific noise complaint from New Belly House regarding the existing turbine?
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. We have got Paul Buffton, Environmental, Health, with us online. Okay, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. No, we haven't had any complaints about this wind turbine.
Okay.
Short and sweet.
That was my principal concern, that we were potentially going to add to what was a possible problem, but it seems as though that's not recorded. So, as the previous two speakers, I would also find myself in a position I could support this.
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. If you'll allow me, members, Paul Benisius online there. Councillor Glynn mentioned about the noise assessment earlier and about the numerical data and the very small differences between the data after the two, I think it was the valley correction. Are you able to just pick up on Councillor Glynn's point and answer his concerns, please?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what the agent said on this, both noise assessments, the first one and the second one that was provided for this, were completed in accordance with the Institute of Acoustics Good Practice Guidance. So the valley correction would have been put on both noise assessments. I think the thing that changed was in the second assessment that they've actually stated that they've done that. And that's why the figures wouldn't have changed across the two. Coming to New Bailey, which is the closest property to the turbine, I think it's acknowledged it's a really 0.2 dB is a really small threshold. But nonetheless, it comes beneath that line of 35 dB, so it's shown it's compliant. The noise report does recognise that there is little wiggle room in that, and the applicant's going to have to site it on the location that they've said they've got to do. There's no room for micrositing it. What I can say in terms of New Bailey is, anyway, that there wouldn't have been a valley correction applied to that anyway, because it's on the same plane as the turbine. So there is no intervening valley. So even though that discussion's been explained, it's not relevant at that particular property.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul, for clearing that up. Councillor Gallagher, has your hand gone down?
No, my machine's playing up. Yeah, I've got, it's not related to planning. It's related to another point around that perceived abandoned property. Perhaps we could refer that to our revenue and benefits team so they can do the investigation, and perhaps they should be charge the second unoccupied house supplement.
Okay, I'm sure that'll be noted by somebody picking up this meeting. Councillor Hugh, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. I'm looking at the rights of way map, which must be up on screen, and which one is New Bailey? Which building is it? Bailey, and then there's Hafod Wen, which seems to be the closest to the turbine. We haven't mentioned Hafod Wen. Is that one of the Baileys that are being discussed here? And I need to ask as well, there is a rights of way, obviously, passing the turbine. There is mention of it in the report, obviously, and there are possible issues with traffic along that. Now, I'm fully supportive of this application, but I think it's only fair that we have a full clarification of what's going on, because I also believe, alongside Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson, that this might be the way for future sort of applications to be relevant to a particular homestead, not on a mass that we tend to be engaging with in Powys. But that is a personal point of view which isn't perhaps relevant to this. But if you could answer those, which one is Hafod Wen newly named or missing, and issues on the rights of way? Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Diolch yn fawr. Are you able to lighten this? You haven't got your can you put your...
I wonder whether Paul might know which one's New Bailey.
Yeah, I can come in there. So Bailey and New Bailey are actually next to each other. They're adjacent. New Bailey is slightly closer than
right, yes,
the previous dwelling. So they're together. I'm not sure about Hafod Wen. I believe it's not a dwelling.
Okay, it is shown. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Councillor Hugh. Is Hafod Wen? Is it a wood? I really don't know. And as I say, apologies to everyone. Aled, who was handling this, has had to go off on an emergency this morning. He would have known the answer to this, but Gemma,
I'm just looking.
give us a couple of seconds, please. And
is the rights of way issue able to be addressed in between? I mean, I'm sure it's okay, but a clarification would be helpful. It is mentioned in the report.
Yeah, so what was the actual concern with the right of way? That there was traffic along it, or
there was traffic, especially during the construction time, which
I think in terms of the possible concerns that the construction traffic was going to use the right of way, and that might impact upon bridleway users. I think that was the concerns in terms of that of this application. Yeah, so there is a condition to require a traffic plan so that would be dealt with, so that the users would be safeguarded, from the vehicles that were using it for the purposes of constructing and deconstructing the turbine. And rights of way, Countryside Services were content with that.
Councillor, you're content with that in relation to the rights of way?
I am, Chair. I am.
Thank you. And I think Gemma has some further information.
So I've just been checking our GIS system in relation to, sorry, is it Hafod Wen? I think it's shown on the plan on the screen. Yes. So there's no recorded property on our GIS system within that location. And yes, just to clarify what Paul confirmed, Old Bailey and New Bailey are part of kind of the same kind of farm stead, shall we say, where the Bailey is shown on that plan.
Thank you very much. I'm satisfied with that.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Councillor Hugh. Councillor Sian Cox, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, my microphone wouldn't unmute there for a minute. I've got 3 questions, if that's okay. One of them is about noise, and I'm just asking for clarity that the valley correction that's spoken about in the noise assessment update and in the officer's report, does that include assessment of the tunnelling effect that's mentioned specifically by the Community Council? None of the reports mention that word tunnelling. They talk about corrections for for concave ground profiles and sound propagation, but they don't actually specify that that includes a tunnelling effect. Can I have assurance that they do, that the tunnelling effect has been considered specifically? I've got a couple of questions about the shadow flicker. And the officer in the supplementary update report that we were given says that the nearest residential properties are located beyond the distances normally associated with significant shadow flicker effects. But the one mentioned in the officer's report to the committee only mentions of shadow flicker is by the heritage officer, who says that it affects properties typically within 1 kilometre to 1.5 kilometres from a turbine, and the planning statement identifies 5 dwellings between 900 and 300 metres. So I wanted clarity as to why those dwellings are considered beyond the effect radius. And especially because it's a replacement turbine, but it's bigger. And I wonder, do we have enough detail in the reports to be assured that the shadow flicker won't be worse as a result of it being bigger? So I'd like some assurance about that, please. And I've also got a question about ecology. Bear with me while I find it. So the planning officer's recommendation doesn't fully, I'm not sure it fully reflects what the ecologist recommended. It doesn't include, in any specific terms anyway, the ecologist's second recommendation, which talks about planting, seeding and turfing being carried out in the correct seasons, etc., and any trees or plants that die within a period of 5 years from completion being replaced. So there was a few clauses in there. And also, even though it's not included in the ecologist's recommendation, the ecologist does ask for the enhancements proposed to be changed to a different kind of enhancement. And in the recommendation from the planning officer that calls for, that insists on puts as a condition the biodiversity enhancement scheme, it doesn't specify that those enhancements should be changed to what the ecologist recommended. So those are my questions. I hope that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shan. Jim? Yeah, Paul, are you happy to take the first point that Councillor Shan raised in relation to the tunnelling effect?
Yeah, that's not a term I've come across before, tunnelling effect. It's certainly not referenced in the guidance. The DTI assessment and rating of noise from wind farms 2006, which is recently replaced ETSU R97, does talk about the valley effects. There's no mention of tunnelling effects, so it wouldn't be relevant to look at something else.
Councillor Shan, does that?
Yes,
Hello?
that answers my question. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Gemma, would you happy take up the shadow flicker, please, and the ecologist and the enhancements?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chair. So shadow flicker standard guidance takes a figure of 10 blade diameters, get the rotor diameters of a turbine, and that is times 10, so no properties within that distance. Now, based on the size of the property before, wind turbine before us, that's approximately 280 metres. Now, we have heard through public representations and in the officer's report that the properties referred to, the Old and New Bailey, they're approximately 480 metres. So that's why the officers have concluded within their assessment that they consider a shadow flicker wouldn't be an impact to those properties, given the distances and using that industry standard guidance of 10 blade diameters. In terms of ecology, so what officers have done instead is you'll note condition 3 on the planning consent. We've asked prior to commencement development, a detailed biodiversity enhancement scheme shall be submitted. whilst we note the ecologist has recommended planting, that wasn't obviously shown on any plans or further details of what species, etc. So in the interest of clarity, we've asked that that is discharged formally through a condition. So a scheme will be provided to us, shown on a plan with all those full details shown. So we've covered it off through condition 3 as attached in that officer's report, which is referred to the biodiversity enhancement. I hope that covers the questions.
Thank you, Gemma. So just, sorry, Chair.
No, please.
Just a quick clarifying question then. So where the recommendation, it refers in several places to, which will include the full details, that doesn't just refer to the full details of the enhancement scheme that will be created, it refers to the full details of what the ecologist has recommended in his report, yes?
It could be a number of things submitted as part of that scheme. We'll obviously do consult our ecologists at the time that application comes before us. But biodiversity enhancements could be a number of things. But yes, obviously we've seen that the agent and applicant has seen what the ecologist has recommended. But it would obviously have to go for the appropriate consultation under that discharge and condition application.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both. I believe that concludes members wishing to ask questions. I can't see further hands up and I can't see any indications of the chamber. It has been proposed and duly seconded that we go with officer's recommendation, in which case, Jade, are you happy to put it in the chat box, please?
Just so you're aware, a number of planning committee members are having a problem with their screens and their internet connection.
Sincere apologies for this real technical problem. So we are going to move on to item 4.4 on our agenda. So before we go there, Jade, can we have a roll call, please?
Councillor Gareth D. Jones.
Matt.
Adrian Jones. Sean Cox.
Here.
Deb Edwards.
Present.
Peter James.
Emma.
Ed Jones.
He declared an interest.
Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
Karina Kenyon-Wade. Carl Lewis.
Present.
Gareth Pugh.
Present.
David Selby.
Present.
Jonathan Wilkinson. Hugh Williams.
Matt.
And Fleur France Morgans is having difficulties entering the meeting.
Thank you, Jade. Members, before we move on to this, I will come to Rachel on this one to just highlight something, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members, the application before you now, application 4.4 on the agenda. In view of the officer interest declared in the application, for the record, I can confirm I have reviewed the file and it has been processed correctly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. We have two speakers on this application, Councillor Deb and the agent, Ms. Mortimer Davis. But prior to them speaking, the officer taking us through this application is Kate. So please, Kate, to your recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for erection of a meteorological mast and ancillary structures, maximum height of 22.5 metres from ground level for a temporary period of up to 3 years, 3,500 metres south of Llanfiangel Rhydaethon. Just to clarify and to make members aware, we have received 2 further public representations on the application since the committee and update reports were prepared. We received them yesterday. The representations raise issues surrounding the requirement for the mast when the wider energy park proposal has been submitted as a DNS application. The representations also request that any approval of this application includes a condition that the resulting suite of weather data is shared publicly and to record data in relation to protected species. Concerns have also been received that documents relating to the previously approved existing masts in the vicinity have not been available on the public or are not available on the public website currently, and that some documents such as the revised EIA screening assessment were uploaded in the last couple of days. These recent representations will be addressed in my presentation now. So the site is shown by a red cross and the black arrow on the screen before you. Llanfiangor Rhydaethon is located to the northwest, New Radnor to the southeast, Llandegli to the southwest. The A44 highway travels to the south, and the site's in close proximity to Radnor Forest. As previously advised, it's proposed to erect a temporary aluminium alloy mast tower and equipment. Galvanised steel rope guy wires, steel ground anchors, galvanised steel booms attached to various points of the mast to record wind speeds at different heights, and a solar photovoltaic PV array anchored to the ground but attached to the mast to power the equipment. The mast is stated to be required for the measurement of wind and weather data and is proposed for a temporary period of 3 years. As noted, recent representations reference the wider DNS application and the need for the mast. However, officers understand the mast is required to collect further data to inform the technical specifications of the proposed turbines. In terms of the request to consider conditioning the data collected, officers do not consider that this would be an appropriate condition. There would not appear to be any planning purpose for it. No consultees such as NRW have requested such a condition. This is the site location plan with the site edged in red. The green dot in the sort of just off centre of the application site indicates the position of the mast, and the black lines indicate the guy wires. This slide shows the zone of theoretical visibility of the mast and identifies the locations of existing masts. So the proposed mast proposed in this application is shown by the red square, and the two other masts are shown by the orange and yellow squares on this plan. As referred to in the representations we've recently received, the mast approved to be retained for a further temporary period under a 2025 application appears to have been placed incorrectly on this ZTV. It's actually located to the northwest of the site, between Llanfiangor Rhydaethon and the application site for this proposed mast. However, we do not consider this affects the overall visual impact assessment and does not change the conclusions reached in the report, as the correct wire frames accurately show the development and the existing mast relationship to the proposed. The wire frames will be shown later in the presentation. In terms of documents related to the previously approved mast not being available online currently, this is because we've moved to a new software system which provides our website kind of presence. So since the 16th of July, when we moved from our old system, documents related to some previous applications have not been available. However, the documents for this current application that you're considering now have been available, and some have been uploaded to the website this week. For example, the revised environmental impact assessment, which was also brought to members' attention in the update report. This is the site layout plan. The met mast position is indicated by a green dot and the solar array in a sort of pink rectangle. This is an elevation or drawing of the proposed mast, which would be a lattice metal structure at a maximum height of 122.5 metres. This is a plan view of the mast, which shows the central mast and the guy wires extending out. This plan shows an indicative route to the site via the black dotted route. Access would be off the A488 highway via the Fishpools car park, and then via Natural Resources Wales land and forestry tracks. No new temporary or permanent tracks are required for the development. No abnormal loads are proposed. On this basis, the Highway Authority has advised that the development would not have an adverse impact on the existing highway network and has not objected to the development. This is a constraints plan. The proposed mast is shown by the red square. The site of special scientific interest is shown hatched purple to the southeast. Scheduled monuments are shown by pink shapes. Yellow circle with brown buffer are sites of aircraft crashes. Non-designated historic site assets are shown by a red dot. The potential impact upon the historic environment is considered in the committee report and its update. However, based on advice from CADU and HENEB, officers consider that the settings of scheduled monuments or archaeological features would not be unacceptably affected. Here, this slide shows peat depth. So peat depth numbers, or the numbers peat depth shows is peat depth in centimetres. The wider area is characterised by blanket mire, upland, heathland and purple moor grass and rush pastures, all habitats published under the Environment Act Wales, Section 7, Priority Habitat. However, soil coring data has been provided, which indicates relatively shallow peats or organic soil throughout the application site area. And Natural Resources Wales have advised that sufficient information has been submitted to demonstrate that the majority of infrastructure would not be within blanket mire vegetation. Therefore, considering the construction methods and footprint of the development, Natural Resources Wales have advised that the mast would have limited impacts on both blanket mire vegetation and on drainage, which would affect the wider area of peatland. However, if NRW have advised that if the chosen location proves to be unsuitable and micrositing within the immediate surrounding area is required, they would have concerns regarding potential impacts on areas of deeper peat and blanket mire vegetation. As such, they requested a condition to require the submission and approval of a micrositing protocol to ensure that the potential presence of deep peat in other areas would not be, would be confirmed and where necessary, mitigation measures carried out, etc. The applicant's agent has requested that condition is amended so that only a difference in siting over 5 metres would need to be confirmed through us. Officers we have gone back to NRW on this point, and they have confirmed they have no objection to an amendment to the condition based on the information available, because during a site visit that they conducted in April 2026, no peat bog areas were found within 5 metres of the proposed mast site. Therefore, we do recommend that condition 3 is amended to include the 5 metres as requested by the agent. But I will recap on that at the end of the presentation. So again, back to the ZTV, the zone of theoretical visibility and the viewpoint locations. A visual and landscape assessment supports the application. Theoretical visibility of the mast is shown in green. Viewpoint locations are shown as black dots. The proposed and existing masts are shown, and as noted before, there is also an additional mast to the northwest towards Llanfy Angle Rhydaethon. The slide shows national trails, a long distance walk with black dotted lines, blue dotted line, a pink line and a purple line. So you've got Office Dyke National Trail, the Heart of Wales Line Trail, Glyndwr's Way and the Wye Valley Walk. 4 viewpoint locations have been submitted. As you can see, A, B, C and D shown on the plan. So we should go through those now. So this is viewpoint A. A view, they called it Caigan and Bank. The viewpoint shows the baseline photograph on the top and the wireline drawing below. It's the same for each viewpoint, obviously the same format. The proposed mast location is shown in the centre, and the existing masts on this occasion on the right. This is the second viewpoint. Taken from the Heart of Wales Line Trail near the Pales. The proposed mast is shown in the centre. Viewpoint C, Llandegli Rocks, proposed mast shown in the centre. And viewpoint D, the Heart of Wales Line Trail near Coco's Farm campsite. The proposed mast shown in the centre. So the submission indicates that due to its location and form, the mast is likely to be perceptible up to approximately 3 kilometres to the north, east, south and west from where it's situated. Beyond that, the perceptibility of the mast would ultimately diminish. And in the wider landscape, the mast would not appear as a prominent feature. The site's obviously not located within any nationally or locally designated landscapes. The nearest nationally designated landscape is the Shropshire Hills National Landscape, approximately 12.4 kilometres. Banau Brechyniog National Park is approximately 22 kilometres to the south. The submitted assessment considers that direct effects upon landscape character would occur to landscape aspect area upland moor of Radnor Forest, which is situated within the local character area Radnor Forest, although this would be temporary, obviously being a temporary development. There would be temporary loss of a small area of semi-improved grassland to accommodate the base of the mast. The anchor points of the guy would be dug out and filled back in with the grassland reinstated once the installation's complete. Other areas of the landscape which would be affected include its strong sense of remoteness, high levels of tranquility and views experienced from limited sections of public rights-of-way, including sections of trails, principally the Heart of Wales Line Trail and nearby open access land, as well as expansive views from the overall upland landscape. Overall, the submission judges that the scale of effect is small, the duration will be short-term and reversible, and the magnitude of change is judged to be low. So overall, it's concluded it's resulted in a minor adverse but not significant landscape effect. The impact on all four of those viewpoints has been assessed as minor adverse but not significant visual impact. The development would be perceptible to motorists travelling on the A44 to the south and west of the site, as well as motorists travelling north-eastwards. There may also be glimpsed views of the development from the minor lanes, obviously in the area. However, motorists using these roads would be in transit and any views would be intermittent. The development would be located in an area of open access land and would be visible in views experienced by recreational users of public rights-of-way, open access land and common land surrounding the site. Again, users of the public rights-of-way would be in transit, passing by, and any adverse visual impacts are considered would be intermittent and sustained for a short period of time. Also, the slender form and lattice kind of structure means it would not be dominant in views. The development would be short-term and fully reversible, so adverse effects on views would be temporary. There's no settlements in the immediate vicinity. The nearest settlements are Llanfiangel, Llydaethon, approximately 3.2 kilometres to the northwest, and Llandegli, approximately 4.2 kilometres to the west, to the southwest, sorry. Some properties in these settlements are afforded views towards the site, of course. However, owing to the distance and intervening topography, it's considered that development would not give rise to effects on the residential visual amenity of those occupiers of properties that may have views. There are several farmsteads and obviously isolated properties in closer proximity to the site, although the closest have no theoretical visibility, according to the ZTV. Those which do have potential visibility are located approximately 3.1 kilometres and 3.7 kilometres distance. So in summary, officers accept the conclusions of the landscape and visual appraisal. The development would consist of a relatively tall man-made vertical structure, which would be evidence in views from surrounding landscape, along with the existing and approved masts located within the same broad area of the Radnor Forest landscape. However, given the temporary position and the slim, lightweight design, we do not consider it would give rise to unacceptable adverse impacts on landscape character or views or visual amenity experienced from the surrounding landscape, individual properties, communities, public rights-of-way or other recreational assets. So finally, in terms of public rights of way, as set out within the response from our countryside services team, the access route would affect a number of public rights of way, and the rights of way team are concerned that vehicle movements associated with the development have the potential to damage the surface of the public rights of way. The public rights of way team have requested the inclusion of conditions to require the submission on an approval of an access management plan, and a scheme setting out a way in which public rights of way will be accommodated within the development site, such as surfacing, prevention of land alteration of land levels, etc. These conditions are considered to be reasonable to ensure the development would not have an unacceptable impact upon those rights of way. So overall, officers consider that the material planning issues have been sufficiently addressed during the processing of this application, and that the development would not have an unacceptable adverse impact upon the historic or natural environment, the character and appearance of the surrounding area, highway access and safety, public rights of way, subject to the use of conditions and informatives set out in the recommendation. Therefore, the recommendation is one of conditional consent. Going back to the proposed amendment to condition 3, currently the condition states, prior to the commencement of development, should repositioning of the mast be required, a micro-siting protocol shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority in consultation with Natural Resources Wales. The protocol shall be implemented as approved. We would like to recommend that this is altered to include the 5 metres, so that it would then read, prior to the commencement of development, should repositioning of the mast of more than 5 metres be required, a micro-siting protocol shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority in consultation with Natural Resources Wales. The protocol shall be implemented as approved. Thank you, Chair.
Kate, thank you. Diolch yn fawr. As mentioned, we have 2 speakers. So first, I'd like to ask Councillor Deb to come up, and if the agent, McKenna Mortimer Davis, can stand by. Councillor Deb, you have 5 minutes, so the time's yours when you're ready.
Chair, members of the committee, I have requested this application for a temporary meteorological mast come before committee because of the exceptional level of public interest. Residents from a number of surrounding areas have engaged with the wider Nantmithil Energy Park proposal and are following associated planning applications very closely. Given the scale of interest, I consider it appropriate that this application should be determined transparently in a public forum by the committee. I am not asking members to prejudge the wider proposal, but the application before you today, to consider the planning merits of this application, taking into account all material considerations and views that have been raised by the local community. Namdiangle Community Council raised the query in regards to the cumulative impact of being 2 other meteorological masts nearby, and having just received a planning application to extend the term of the closer existing mast. Is there a need for another? The installation of meteorological masts is normally used to collect wind and weather data to support design and energy yields, calculating on proposal wind farm. Once the developer considers it has sufficient data, it can submit its main application. I believe that the evidence has already been gathered and the information that this mast may provide has already been lodged with planning. So I am left a little bit confused. So to echo the words of the Community Council, is there any need for this application, along with concerns that have been raised to the close proximity by them of the SSI and the peak levels? But most have been addressed within the pack and today by the planning officer. But thank you, members, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr, Councillor Deb. If I can politely ask you either go out and grab a coffee, or you're welcome to sit at the back, whichever you prefer. Jade, how are we looking? No, that looks like we're clear as in. Great. Have we got the agent for this application, please? McKenna Mortimer Davis standing by. Hello. Ms. Mortimer Davis, can you hear us? She is in, is she, Jade? If you can hear us, you're on mute and we can't hear you.
Hi, sorry, were you talking to me?
No, not yourself. Sorry,
Sorry
Priya, no,
about that. I've just joined. Apologies.
Nice to see you. Can we? Is the agent for this application? Can you hear us? Okay. Yeah, you happy to read that out? Yeah. As we can't hear from the agent, we have got a written statement, which, with members' permission, are you happy for that to be read out? Yep. Thank you, Rachel. Would you be so kind?
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this temporary planning application. My name is McKenna Mortimer Davis and I am a senior planner at Turley, the planning agent acting on behalf of the applicant, Nant Mithil Energy Park Limited. This application is for the erection of a meteorological mast for a temporary period of 3 years. The proposed location is southeast of Llanfihangel-Rhythaethyn. The purpose of the mast is to measure wind speeds and direction to inform the turbine selection process for the proposed Nant Mithil Energy Park, ensuring that a safe and sufficient turbine is selected appropriate for the conditions at the site should planning permission be granted by the Welsh ministers in due course. This is a standalone planning application entirely separate to any DNS application for the energy park. This proposal is identical to an application granted last year for a Met mast on behalf of the applicant. The mast will have a maximum height of 120 metres from ground level and be fitted with monitoring equipment measuring up to 2.5 metres. The mast will be supported by 3 sets of guy wires. The mast is temporary and will be decommissioned after the 3-year period and the land returned to its original condition. There will be no permanent foundations. The location of the mast has been chosen, taking into account the need for it to be as close as practical to an existing access track on a relatively flat area, avoiding statutory and non-statutory environmental designations, and to ensure impacts on any sensitive habitats and species are avoided, then minimised in line with stepwise approach required by Planning Policy Wales. The applicant sought specialist advice from its professional ecologist and hydroecologist to confirm the most suitable location for the mast, with a slight adjustment to the siting during determination for further consideration the protected sites and habitats present on the site. The Council's professional planning officer's recommendation for approval is welcome, and we support the conclusions that the scheme is compliant and the aims and objectives of Future Wales, Planning Policy Wales, and the Local Development Plan, the Powys Local Development Plan. The Ministry of Defence has been consulted in relation to the proposal and confirmed no objections subject to appropriate conditions, which are included within the officer report, included for the provision of aviation safety lighting and notification 14 days prior to any works. The applicant has submitted biodiversity survey reports and assessment for the habitats on the site, along with a recent update. The applicant's consultant team met NRW on site at the Met Mast location, discussed the scheme, and no objection has been received from the local authority ecologist or NRW consultees in this respect, subject to conditions including the inclusion of a microsighting protocol and that bird deflectors are positioned on the outer guy wires surrounding the mast to ensure that impacts to protect sites and habitats are minimised. The applicant commissioned a chartered landscape architect to prepare the landscape and visual assessment within the supporting planning and environmental report. The mast is designed to be unobstructed through the slender form, materials and colour. The conclusions of the landscape assessment were that due to the narrow form of the mast and the reversible nature of the development, the temporary mass would not give rise to significant adverse impacts on landscape character, views, and visual amenity. To conclude, this application should be considered on its own merits like every other planning application before you, and without prejudice to DNS application for the Energy Park. We are grateful for the professional and thorough assessment provided by the Council's planning case officer and consultees. We respectfully request that committee members approve this application, the temporary proposal in line with their professional officer's recommendation. Thank you for your time this morning. McKenna, Mortimer, Davis, Turley.
Rachel, thank you for stepping in the last minute. Members, that concludes our speakers. So I'm in your hands. Who wishes to start us off? Councillor Hugh Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. It is frustrating because we know the purpose of this mast, but we can't make a comment regarding the sort of fundamental element to inform the preparation of a planning application to support the scheme to build wind turbines. It's frustrating. It really is, and but that's the circumstances. But can I ask, what is the need if there are two existing meteorological masts within that area? Do they belong to the same firm, and wouldn't they gather the same sort of data information? Those are the points I've made, Chair. It is frustrating, to be honest with you, but that's the way it is under the planning protocol. But I would like an answer to that, please.
Good to know. Got it here. Kate, are you happy to take that up, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I believe that the existing masts are within the, I wouldn't like to say the exact same ownership, but I believe they are connected to the wider NatMethil Energy DNS scheme. So I believe they are all connected. The only information I've had is, obviously, which I've passed on to you, is that the data is required for additional data for turbine selection. And is what Rachel read out from the agent's statement.
Okay, Councillor Hugh.
Right. I mean, so what different data would that mast collect in comparison to the other two masts, which are within? Well, I don't know. How close are they? I'm not sure.
Kate.
It's quite a wide site. So off the top of my head, you're probably talking 2 kilometres between masts plus. So there is probably quite large variables, I would imagine, in data collection.
Right, Chair, I am uncomfortable with the application, but I appreciate that we have to look at material concerns. But I will listen to the rest of the debate before I make a decision. Thank you very much.
Diolch yn fawr, Councillor Hugh. Councillor Jonathan, please, and then Councillor David Selby.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to Kate for her report. That's much appreciated. You've gone to a lot of work to compile that. Like Councillor Hugh, I feel frustrated. We know what we're talking about here, and yet it's the elephant in the room we're not allowed to talk about. It's quite a bizarre situation, really. But I'm quite happy in myself that I'm able to voice a material concern, having looked at the evidence that's been presented in the report back and heard everything that's been said. And my concern revolves around the military use of this area for low flying. And I particularly draw attention to page 96, where the Ministry of Defence say, in this case, the development falls within the low flying area 07 LFA 07, an area in which military aircraft may operate as low as 250 feet or 76.2 metres above ground level to conduct low-level flight training. The addition of a development featuring tall or narrow profile structures, such as meteorological masts in this locality, has the potential to introduce a physical obstruction to low-flying aircraft operating in this area. I mean, I'm sure everybody here will be aware that recent statements from the Ministry of Defence relating to our national security, that we face as great a threat now as we faced at any time since the Second World War. That the availability of all our low-flying training areas to allow the RAF to train is absolutely imperative. This structure is well above the 76.2 metres stated by the Ministry of Defence. And as such, I feel quite content to be able to refuse this on the grounds that it could impede the ability of the RAF to fly unhindered anywhere over the low-flying area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. Didn't really hear a question, but I just, for reassurance, I'm sorry to drop you on it. Can you address Councillor Wilkinson's concerns in relation to why we've approved this in principle with the concerns listed in that statement?
Yeah, so obviously, yeah, the MOD have noted obviously that the heights, etc., but they've then gone on to request 2 conditions are placed on a consent. So they haven't submitted an objection. So they've recommended or requested 2 conditions for prior to the construction aviation lighting scheme. So obviously, I assume that's for aircraft, the mast to be visible to aircraft, and then obviously notifying the Ministry of Defence before the mast would be erected. So obviously they can put that in their records, and I assume aircraft will be have knowledge of and pilots knowledge of where it is. So on the basis of their comments or their advice, we don't feel we are able to sustain an objection on those grounds.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's noted, and thank you, Kate, for that. Unfortunately, it doesn't satisfy my concerns, so I find myself in a different place on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor David Selby, please.
I understand the problem, the issues about Ministry of Defence, but the key issue for us is that MOD have been given every opportunity of commenting and objecting. They've commented, but they haven't objected. So we'd find it difficult to go against what MOD are saying. All of us are frustrated, I'm sure, by all the other issues raised, but I can see no planning reason why a temporary, and it's the temporary nature of this project that I think is the clincher for me. I see no reason why we should do anything other than support the officer's recommendation, and I move that we do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Selby. Councillor Sian Cox, you're next to indicate, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 quite minor questions and then a third question, and I'm not sure whether the third question is something we can consider, but you can be the judge of that, if you'll indulge me. So the first question is, Kate, could you explain what you mean by there being no theoretical visibility for the farmsteads and dispersed isolated properties in close proximity to the site? What do you mean by theoretical visibility? You go on to talk about potential visibility of properties further away, but I'm not quite sure what you mean by theoretical visibility. I'm assuming that the view is obscured by something, but it would be good to know that for sure. The second question relates to the information that came through in the supplementary update report. So in the section where the concern about the potential archaeological implications of the loading and unloading locations, the response says that the only preparation works will involve the removal of self-seeded trees along the fire break. So my concern really is actually about the trees, not about the archaeology, because the removal of trees wasn't mentioned in the ecological reports or by you in your appraisal. So I'd just like assurance that the significance of the removal of trees has been assessed from an ecological perspective. Those are the 2 little questions. And the third question is about whether there's any information available, because I can't find it in the papers, information available to explain the big difference between NRW's responses right up to, not including, right up to the final response around the peat samples. So in its second response, it said that their own tests show that 50% of the samples were in deep peat between 12 and 80 centimetres with a median range of 30 centimetres. But by the final response, which was in February, wasn't it? They say that the soil coring data that was subsequently provided indicates relatively shallow peats on organic and relatively shallow organic soil. So they're satisfied by coring data, but we don't actually have a report about that coring data. The only peat survey we've got is the one from November. It was uploaded in July, but it was written in November. And it doesn't explain the big difference between the samples that have changed, the samples that NRW first mentioned, which showed deep peat, and in several places, and the final coring samples, which satisfied NRW that the peat was shallow. And I wondered, do we have that data to hand to reassure us as to why NRW was satisfied, such that it changed its opinion so significantly? What happened, between the final response was in July, not February. So the fourth response was in February and the final response was in July. The fourth response in February from NRW, they were still concerned about peat. And then by the July response, they're saying they're satisfied by. So I'm assuming those coring samples were taken between February and July, but we don't have anything about them.
Thank you, Councillor Shan. We'll take your final question first, Kate, if that's okay, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Shan. Yeah, so as you can probably tell from the report and the responses from NRW, it's been backwards and forwards a little bit on the peat issue. So initially, as you say, peat, NRW were not happy with the location. The mast has been slightly resited to account for the peat depths as well. But yes, in the spring of this year, more data. We have got more data provided by the applicants, obviously in conjunction. And then obviously NLW reviewed that. They also did attend a site meeting where they reviewed the site, as I think it's stated in the the agent's statement. So yes, we have had more data that confirms the advice that NLW have provided. So we're satisfied on that point of peat.
Councillor Shan, does that satisfy your question?
Yeah, so I noticed that the report does mention several site visits, and it also mentions its own site. NRW visited the site in April with the applicants, but it doesn't say anything about tests being carried out. So I'm assuming, Kate, that the new data that you've got is the result of tests that were carried out during those site visits in April, was it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and is there a reason why that wasn't put onto the portal for us to see?
Yeah, we believe it was uploaded to the portal. It may be this issue to do with obviously switching over to the new system, whether it hasn't come across.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check that, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
but it was. I did publicise. I do remember uploading it to the website because that's how NLW viewed it.
There seemed
it was publicly
that's
available.
Really strange.
Yeah.
The only peat survey on that I can see, unless it goes by a different name, the new data goes by a different name, is the one that was uploaded in July, but it was written in November. That's the report that was written in November, so it doesn't cover anything that happened after November. Very odd.
I think we'll take a double check and get back to
Yeah.
you where it is. It's probably been lost in the transfer between the two portals.
I think so.
It?
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's there by a different name, because I didn't open every single document seeking something about peat, I just looked for a heading that indicated it would be something about peat. So if it's there under a name that I haven't recognised it by, could you let me know?
Of course, thank you,
Thank
Councillor.
you.
And then the other two questions are theoretical visibility and the removal of trees.
Yeah, in respect of the ZTV first, wasn't it? Zone of theoretical visibility. So obviously when they're producing a zone of theoretical kind of model, I believe that obviously it's modelling in terms of topography, large landscape features, etc. So there are areas where, in theory, because of the topography and large landscape features, that there would be no visibility from there. Hopefully that clarifies that point. So it's a model, it's a computer model.
It does, I understand. Yeah. Thanks, Kate, that's perfect.
Yeah. And then in terms of tree removal was the third one. So the tree removal is referred to where there would be unloading and loading of materials to carry out the development. So it's not part of the development site, it's kind of an ancillary part. So we wouldn't be able to sort of consider tree removal as part of that unloading area. It's not an area that's included in the development site.
Can I ask an extra question, Chair?
Of course,
About that? Yeah, so it's not a consideration for planning services, but would any tree removal anywhere be something that the council would want to have assessed from an ecological perspective? Would it have been assessed elsewhere, or is it so minor that it doesn't fall under any regulations? Or maybe you don't know that, Kate.
No, yeah, so tree removal within a development site area or immediately adjacent would be a material planning consideration.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not
for
asking
offices.
that.
Sorry.
I'm recognising that you've already said that. I understand that. It's not a planning consideration, but I'm just thinking from an ecological perspective outside of planning.
Yeah, okay.
Do you understand? Is it not something that would be regulated?
So if there's no development that requires planning permission in other locations, the planning authority is not required to be notified of such tree removal unless the trees are a certain width in their trunk and height, I believe, in conservation areas, or if they're the subject of tree preservation orders. So in those instances, we would be notified and a tree application, as we call them, would need to be submitted. But otherwise, just general trees that are not protected an NLW felling licence may be required if certain level of trees is required to be felled in per calendar year, I believe.
Thank you, Kate.
But I was just going to say also, sorry, that the provisions of kind of wildlife legislation would still apply, whether or not the planning authority are involved, that developers and tree fellers are still required to comply with wildlife legislation in terms of nesting birds, bats, etc.
Thank you. Kate, Shan, are you happy with those?
I am, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Shan. I've got three further hands, Councillor Carl, then Councillor Karina, and then Councillor Gareth. Councillor Carl, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to second Councillor Jonathan Wilkinson's proposal, Chair. We do live in a very dangerous world. Only the other day, the French fired on one of our MPs even. So any restriction to our Air Force, I think we should be avoiding.
So, Chair, it was a proposal.
I missed that. Could you repeat what I've had a proposal of Councillor David Selby to go.
Yeah.
And what was your proposal? I missed that.
Yeah. A proposal that I cannot support will be voted to reject this proposal.
Okay.
On the basis of a threat to national security because of the inability of our pilots to train.
Okay, so it's not, you know.
Yeah,
okay,
does that make sense, Chair?
Yes, I've had this one seconded first.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Carl. Councillor Karina, please.
I was going to second Councillor David. Like Councillor David, I can see no reason why not to accept this application for a meteorological mast.
Councillor Karina, we're struggling to hear you, sorry.
Really? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would like to, Councillor David early on could see no reason why not to accept this application for a meteorological mast as the officer's suggestion, and I would like to second that. I do know this area too. I walked up to Black Mixon within the last 6 months, and there's a large distinctive radio mast on top of the Black Mixon, which is the next high point. Just
Chair, I'm struggling to hear. I'm sorry.
Could you not hear me?
No, very well.
It's difficult. I heard what you said at the time, but did everyone? I think what Councillor Karina said, she was happy to propose second Councillor David Selby's proposal, and that she's aware of the area and knows the area personally. Thank you. Councillor Gareth, please.
Yeah, just a point for fact from Kate, please. You couldn't say how wide the actual mast is. You know, it's a very tall linear But what's the width of the actual sides of the mast? Do you know that or not? I know something is how wide it is. I don't need the exact figure. I'm just wondering, is it a couple of meters wide or less than a couple of meters wide? Or...
We have the answer.
Yeah, sorry about that. The plan's very small. So we believe the centre, like the mast, is 2.5 meters, but then out to each point is 1143.
Yes, it's the actual mast. So it's
if I just clarify.
Oh.
So there's a plan here indicating that the base plate will be 2.5 meters square, the concrete pad in which the lattice tile will be fixed, and then the lattice tile will be about 1.1 meters, so 1143 centimeters wide or square. 11. Yeah, 1.1
meters. So you're talking 4 foot wide, roughly, in my maths. The only reason I asked the question, Chair, was that's what I thought the answer is going to be. So we're talking something that's about 4 foot wide. I've had a look at some trees on the hills, a little bit distant from me. I can't see them. You know, I think the point Kate made about visuality of more than 3 kilometers is founded on that. So,
thank you. Councillor Carr, your light is still on?
Sorry.
Good, thank you. Right, that concludes the speakers. No one else is indicating. Councillor Jonathan, you proposed and it's been seconded. For us to accept that proposal, you have to come up with a reason that the officer and Rachel are happy that that's a good planning reasons why not to go with officer recommendation.
Whether it's regarded as a proper planning reason or not, I think my concerns about this are regarding as I've stated pretty clearly before, the ability of the military to fly unhindered, untrained for what is a very real and present danger to our national security. That is a mast which is 122 meters high and in a low flying area. I've accepted that the MOD have, while stating that it poses an impediment to their ability to fly, there's not a formal objection, but my concerns are sufficiently great that I feel it may compromise our pilots' ability to train fully. It is an obstacle in a low flying area, which I consider to be an impediment on their ability to train. As I stated, you know, security chiefs have stated we are as close to war within the next 5 years as we've been since the Second World War. This is not a trivial matter. It's a very, very serious matter.
I hear you and totally understand where you're coming from. Personally, I'm struggling to accept that because the MOD have not really objected to it, but can I speak to Gemma?
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. Hear what you're saying. I think we need a bit more. And I suggest you direct yourself to the conditions, the proposed planning conditions, in light of your concerns, and advance your reasons as to why you don't consider them to be sufficient to approve the application.
Well, I don't think I'm able to expand beyond what I've already said. I'd invite my seconder to see if he can add anything to the discussion beyond what I've already said.
I'm just in total agreement with Councillor Jonathan. We're in a world now, like I've said before, that is extremely, extremely dangerous, and we should not be impeding our armed forces in any which way possible. They should have free run of that area to conduct their exercises, and this impedes that task in front of them. I can't add any more than that, really. Yeah, I don't think, in this current climate, maybe in a few years' time, if that application was brought back and we live in a very different world, then maybe that would be acceptable. But I think at this moment in time, it is not. Just provides unnecessary risk. And like I said, an MP was fired on the other day by one of our so-called allies in the Channel. I think that that's a wake-up call for everyone. And we had Russian ships in the Channel buzzing our ships. I think we shouldn't be hindering our armed forces in any which way, and this does hinder them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. Yeah, please.
Thank you, members. I just wanted to take this opportunity to come in, and I think I'm looking down the line probably at any potential future appeal that we might face, and perhaps what's the reasoning behind our argument of why those conditions don't meet perhaps the planning test, or why perhaps they don't address the impacts. Now, I refer to the MOD's correspondence, where obviously it's been referred to, and it does say to address this impact, and given the location and scale of the development, the MOD requires that conditions. Now, I sorry if I've missed anything. I don't think at the moment I've heard any reasons of perhaps why those conditions don't then address that concern. If that's been addressed, or if perhaps a statement's put forward to that effect, it is a material planning consideration. So, yeah, I would hand over to the vote to you, Chair.
Yeah, can I come back, Chair?
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Councillor Gallagher, you waited as well.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that, and you're quite right to draw my attention to that and the latest statement by the Ministry of Defence asking that these matters are addressed. And to an extent, I agree that they have. But once again, I return to the elephant in the room that we are not allowed to discuss today. And we all know what that is, and we all know what they are. And it is referred to in the Ministry of Defence when they say the addition of development featuring tall and narrow profile structures such as meteorological mass have the potential to introduce a physical obstruction, and that these mass are usually a precursor to a much larger development, which we can't discuss today, which would pose a significant threat to military aircraft trying to conduct low-flying exercises. We're not allowed to discuss that today, but this single structure we are allowed to discuss. And I consider that as a precursor to further development, in my mind, is a sufficient impediment to the military's ability. Now, it's entirely at the prerogative of the Chair and the monitoring officer to reject that and to ask me to withdraw it, and I accept that as well. I can only say what I've said.
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. Councillor Gareth, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I find these applications very difficult because at the end of the day, yes, we have to look at what's in front of us. And we're not allowed to look at the bigger picture of the wind turbines maybe in the future, which wouldn't be our decision anyway. It would be a Welsh Government decision. So like these are put in front of us, but we're not allowed to consider the turbines. Yet the agent is allowed to mention wind turbines within his speech. So like, are we meant to have selective hearing when listening to these agents? I think it's totally wrong that we shouldn't be looking at the wider picture, just like Councillor Jonathan has said now. Because at the end of the day, we know what's coming. We're not stupid, but we're sort of being asked to not look at the big picture and just this one thing in front of us, which we know that the bigger picture is going to be detrimental. And if we think that one mast is detrimental, the turbines are going to be blow this whole 1 hour completely out of the water. So I think we should be allowed to consider the big application, especially when the agent mentions it within his speech. So given the bigger picture, I'm fully with Councillor Wilkinson on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Can you, yes, please, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate, hear what everyone, what the floor is saying. Your decision needs to focus on the application in front of you. Okay, any reasons need to be addressed solely to that application. Otherwise, any decision will be vulnerable to challenge, to adverse costs. So it's a reminder to members to consider the application in front of you and no other application, irrespective of whether it's the same area or not.
Can you give me some, thank you, Rachel. Can you give me some guidance? As I'm not really prepared to withdraw I've made a proposal, I've made my reasons for that proposal very clear. Is it now for the monitoring officer for you to reject that and then for you to move on to the next proposal, which has already been made? Is that the run of things now?
If your reasons advanced, if they are accepted, then it would put to the vote.
Yeah, but you've already said they're not.
Your reasons in considering any other application, potential application, it needs to be focused on this application. So if you can articulate your reasons,
yeah,
focusing on this application.
I think I've articulated to the extent of my ability to articulate. So I think I can say no more than I've said. I initially didn't refer to the larger wind farm application at all, beyond what had already been said by the Ministry of Defence. So I'll leave it in your hands now. If you feel that I haven't met the required threshold, then you will need to reject my proposal and then move on.
Just quickly, there's some hands have shot up. So in relation to this, I am mindful, I'll just say it now before anyone else comments, I am mindful to not accept this proposal with the current reasonings and move to the original proposal, which you did say, Jonathan. So just quickly, please, can I ask for any quick comments of Councillor David Selby, Councillor Gareth and then Councillor Cal? Quick points, please. I'm keen to move this on.
My quick point, Chair, is that I'm not prepared to second guess what the Ministry of Defence thinks about these proposals. We've, as always in the Planning Committee, we vote on and discuss the proposals in front of us. In that case, that emphasises that we've had a good debate.
Thank you.
On all the issues. And I continue to move.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Selby. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, I was going to very quickly say that if we voted on the original proposal, if it goes through, it goes through. If it goes against, it's in effect that is supporting Councillor Jonathan's alternative anyway. So I think we just go ahead with
but we'd have to have reasons.
I know we do, but we need to have that.
Thank you, Councillor Cal. Quickly.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment on the lighting. Do we have any information on what lighting is proposed there?
I think it was mentioned in the report about meteorological light. Meteorological.
Yeah, but it's in the condition there, but I don't see.
It is something infrared, was it? Aviation lights on the top, I read somewhere.
Yeah, I think you've probably read the condition, Councillor Carr, that, yeah, obviously we're just requesting a scheme to be provided. I don't have any more information at this time on proposed lighting.
Do we have any powers, Chair, to ask that the mast is painted in a suitable colour or anything like that, or we just allowed just to go ahead with what's been proposed in front of us?
Right.
Condition anything?
In answer, in consultation with Rachel and with Gemma now and Kate, not going to accept the proposal from Councillor Jonathan. We feel it's a bit weak, opens us up to appeal and everything else. So, and in relation to what Councillor Carl has just said, with the general feeling here, we will liaise with the MOD now and get as much information additionally that we need to highlight this, just to highlight our concerns. Why can we not go back to the MOD and just highlight they have got no concerns, but to highlight what's happened here? We need to reflect the feeling within the room. Yes.
Chair, could I propose that we defer to allow?
And I'd like to move this on, Councillor Carl. No, I just want you to come back to MOD and just say, or just highlight what's happened here in addition to this plan, and just let it know what our committee has said.
Yeah.
I don't want to defer that. No.
They haven't objected. You're right, Tom.
So to clarify, I was not going for a deferment, so like that for future reference with the MOD. I think that's what you were getting at, Councillor Cal, the future reference. Thank you. Right. We have got there. It was proposed by Councillor Selby and seconded by Councillor Carina some length ago that we go with officer.
Yeah, Councillor Hughes got his hand up.
Councillor Hugh.
Chair, I was just going to refer to page 145 of the report. It does mention the lights on the mast and what have you, and what the MOD requires. Thank you.
Thank you. Duly noted. Jay, are you happy to take us to the vote? Thank you. Has everyone had the opportunity to vote electronically?
Could Jay just check if I voted or not? So I voted and then it came up again.
I managed to vote yes. Councillor Gallif, are you happy to vote verbally or you've done it? Councillor Jonathan, are you happy to vote verbally? I think we know which way.
Chair, it may be unsurprised to hear.
Thank you. Any hands? Everyone home happy? How are we looking, Jade?
I have 5 votes for, 4 against and 2 abstentions.
Thank you, all members. So application 25/0764/FUL is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you very much, members. So we can now ask others to come back in. Councillor Ed, Councillor Deb. Back to 4.3 and we'll do roll call again. Thank you. As we take our seats, Jay, would you be so kind as to do a roll call again, please?
Gareth D. Jones,
Matt?
Adrian Jones, Sean Cox.
Can I just come in and check? Is this 4.3 we're looking at now?
Correct. We're going back to 4.
Yes, that's the one that I shouldn't be here for, so I'll just depart for the duration of this one. Thanks, Karen.
So this is the one that was deferred
Yes.
previously, and there's only 8 of us going to be able to hear this. It should be 8 of us.
Gareth D. Jones.
Emma.
Deb Edwards.
Present.
Fleur France Morgans.
Present.
Gareth E. Jones.
Present.
Karina Kenyon Wade.
Present.
Carl Lewis.
Present.
Gareth Pugh.
Present.
David Selby.
Present.
Thank you very much, Jade. Right.
Sorry, can I ask a question? Why do the other members have? I can understand they can't take part in the vote, but why do they have to leave? Because they could be as members of the public, just listen to the debate, as anybody else is right to.
They're more than welcome to sit in the back of the room. More than welcome to, or they can join online and watch. And that's made. Right. Moving on. Item number 4.3 before us. Application that was deferred from a previous committee. Officer taking us through this is Kath, please. And I believe you have a statement before starting. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is an application.
Just wait a second.
This is an application for temporary planning permission for the erection of a meteorological mast of up to 122.5 metres in height, ancillary structures for measurement of wind and weather data, and associated stock-proof fencing for a period of 5 years. This application was considered at the July committee and was deferred to allow the newly elected local member to consider and comment on the application. The application was called in by his predecessors, the reasons for which are in the current report. No changes have been made to the application since it was considered at committee in July, so it is the same application in detail. For clarification, due to what was raised in the last committee, during the processing of the application, a second consultation was carried out. This was to address a change in the description of development and to provide clarity and confirm the maximum height of the mast being 122.5 metres. There were no other changes to the application at that stage. In the interest of transparency, we have received overnight a further request from a third party for another deferral concerning the documents that were appended to the update report. The matters raised in these documents were already included in the officer report at the July committee, and officers are satisfied that all those matters have been addressed by consultees. No new information was included with the request. This is the location of the proposed mast, showing where the red dot is. The 2 nearest small villages to the site are Llanvi Hanglnant Bran to the southwest and Merthyr Canog to the east, northeast, sorry. You can see the road, the B4520 to the east, which travels to Bilth to the north, and then to Brecon to the south. This plan also shows the proximity of the Senny Bridge military training area, which is the hatched area in the northwest. This is the site plan, shows the location of the proposed mast in closer detail. The mast is on privately owned agricultural land, which is shown outlined in the blue. The land shaded orange is common land. You can also see green dashed lines, which are public rights of way, none of which will be impacted by the mast. This slide shows the elevations of the mast. The mast will be a maximum of 122.5 metres tall.
The mast is the same lattice galvanized steel design as other masts that have been given consent, with 3 anchor points and with guy lines at every 5 meters. The outermost guys will be anchored at a point 65 meters from the base of the mast. And given the question that took place in the previous application, the information I have is the mast width is 0.48 meters. This slide shows the indicative access route, which follows an existing track shown by the black dotted line. The mast will be constructed on site and transported there only by 4x4 vehicle and trailer. The mast will not generate additional traffic other than that required periodically for monitoring and maintenance. This slide shows locally identified constraints and designations. The pink shows the area of common land. The hatched blue shows a hydrology buffer zone. It also shows the public right-of-way with a buffer zone. The greys and the white show the percentage of slope and gradient. So as you can see, where the mast is located, it's a fairly flat area of land whilst it falls quite steeply down into the valley. This slide shows the agricultural land classification on which the mast is situated. It's grade 4, which is known as poor quality land, which is shown in the paler green, and grade 5, which is very poor quality land, which is shown in the purple. The mast will be on the grade 4 land. This slide shows the levels of peat at the site. It is at or less than 0.3 meters depth, in other words, 30 centimeters. This is an estimated peat depth between measured survey points, calculated using spatial modeling or interpolation techniques, which means in practice it is a continuous estimate across the site. Therefore, the presence of peat is not significant in this area, and this has been confirmed by comments from NRW. This slide shows cultural and heritage designations within 1, 2, and 3 meter zones. It shows that there are only a few at a distance of 1 kilometer. The pink shading shows the development zone of theoretical visibility, which we will come to on the next slide. You can see the mine Richard standing stone to which objectors have referred between the 1 and the 2 kilometer zone. So in other words, the mine Richard stone is approximately a kilometer and a half away from the mast itself. As Kate's discussed in her application, this slide shows the zone of theoretical visibility of the mast shaded in yellow. The black dotted circumference line is at 13 kilometers from the proposed mast. The shaded yellow area shows land at 122.5 meters or above, and therefore theoretically visible at the mast and vice versa. The blue shaded area shows the Banau Brycheiniog National Park. The pink dotted line is the Epynt Way, and the stars mark the 5 viewpoints of visibility, which we will see next. Viewpoint 1 is at Merthyr Canog, and the wireline drawing shows that the mast will be visible. This is the closest settlement to the mast. The position of the mast with an indication of its height is shown in red. This is a distance of approximately 2.5 kilometers. Okay. Viewpoint 2 is a location on the Epynt west of the B4520, which is the Bilth to Brecon Road. The mast is hardly discernible at approximately 9 kilometers away. So again, on the Y-line drawing, just it's hard to pick out, but below the red wording. Viewpoint 3 is a location on the A40 just outside Brecon. The mast is not discernible at approximately 10 kilometres away. This site is within the national park. It can be seen that at this position within the national park, it will hardly be visible, although it is acknowledged that this is a relatively low point compared to other sites in the national park. Viewpoint 4 is to the north of the mast off the B4519, which is the Upper Chapel Road over to Garth, which actually goes over the Sunnybridge training area itself. It is at a distance of 10 kilometres and again will be barely visible vertical feature in the distance. And finally, the 5th viewpoint is taken from the Epping Way route, which is west of the site on the military range, north of Llywel and Trecastle and the A40. At 10k, the mast again is hardly visible. Okay. The development is considered under policy RE1 of the LDP and also policies 17 and 18 of Future Wales, which supports renewable energy. The mast is designed to gather meteorological data and as such falls within the scope of associated infrastructure as set out in policy RE1. The mast is temporary and conditions will be attached to any granting of consent requiring that the land be reinstated to its pre-development condition. As I said earlier, the application was deferred at the last committee to allow the new local member to consider the application, and his comments have been incorporated into the report for you today. He raised the point about the collection of meteorological data being premature pending consideration of wider project. However, the purpose of the meteorological mast is to gather data to inform the assessment of whether a larger project is technically feasible. The existence of a possible future proposal does not in itself provide a sustainable planning reason for refusal. It's accepted that the mast will be visible from certain viewpoints, but Natural Resources Wales have advised that owing to its lightweight and slender design, the proposal would not result in unacceptable adverse effects upon the wider landscape or the setting and special qualities of the national park. The temporary 5-year period is considered reasonable and reflects the industry standard time frame. The permission would limit the mast retention to a maximum period of 5 years from the date of commissioning, and it's a requirement in the condition that the local planning authority would be notified of that date. The question of a collision risk assessment was raised, but typically that is in relation to operational wind turbines with moving components, and this was not provided and it was not requested, and that has been considered acceptable by both Natural Resources Wales and the council's own ecologist. And finally, he raised the question of whether the National Park Authority objection remains outstanding. It does, but as I've said earlier, NRW have concluded that the proposal will not give rise to unacceptable impacts upon the landscape or the special qualities of the national park, and officers attach significant weight to the advice of the NRW in this regard. With regard to design and landscape impact, as we've seen on the slides, the proposed development is located within the Isker Valley visual and sensory aspect area of land map and is evaluated as moderate, but it doesn't form part of any other defined area of outstanding natural beauty or national park, although the national park lies approximately 7 kilometres to the south. The mast is triangular in design and each side measures, as I said earlier, 0.48 metres. And any impact upon the landscape will be temporary. NRW have concluded that the effects are unlikely to be significantly adverse. The planning policy gives significant weight to the provision of renewable energy sources. And while this site doesn't form part of a pre-assessed area for wind development, Future Wales does not preclude development outside of these pre-assessed zones. The concerns raised about a future wind farm development is not considered to be a reason to refuse the temporary application for a meteorological mast. Third parties have also raised comments about the landscape and the effect it'll have on tourism. No evidence has been provided to support the claim that it would have a negative effect. And as the photo montages show, the structure would not appear overbearing in massing within the landscape at an extensive area around. Banau Brycheiniog National Park have objected to the proposal. And whilst it's acknowledged that theoretical visibility may extend into parts of the national park, the degree and significance of actual effects, factors such as distance, scale, landform, and the nature of the development, the mass would be located approximately 8 kilometres from the nearest identified viewpoints, but would be from around 15 kilometres away from elevated locations such as Pen y Fan. So it's considered that the mast would appear as a very small and often barely perceptible feature in long distance views from the national park. It would not constitute a prominent or defining element, and nor would it detract from the key characteristics or special qualities of the national park. Weight has been afforded to the existing assessments completed and the design of the mast proposed. As I've said before, National Resources Wales have been consulted on the landscape matters, and given the distance from the national park, their view is that it is unlikely to be significantly adverse as to harm its character or special qualities. It's concluded, therefore, that any effects on the national park would be limited and not significant in landscape and visual assessment impact terms. With regard to decommissioning, the proposed mast is of a temporary nature, and site restoration beyond reinstating the anchor trenches would not be required. But it's recommended that a condition will be attached to any consent given concerning the restoration. Third-party comments have raised concerns about concrete, but there are no permanent foundations, and the attachment of a condition, however, will ensure that the site is returned to its pre-development condition. Highways have no objections to the proposal and consider that there will be minimal traffic movements associated with the development, and that development is served by an adequate means of access. Third-party comments have raised concerns about highway safety and the local highway network, but the construction period requires only one digger and a 4x4 vehicle with trailer, which will deliver all the mast components, and then only 4x4 access during each day of construction. Likewise, decommissioning will be carried out in the same way. With regard to neighbour amenity, this is a rigid, unmoving mast. There's a lack of significant moving parts. The slender design and the intervening topography and its temporary nature leads to a conclusion that the development will not have a long-term and acceptable impact. The nearest residential property is some 865 metres to the east. Whilst the height of the proposed mast in this location is acknowledged, actual visibility would depend on the orientation of properties, intervening vegetation, buildings, and local topography. Concerns have also been raised in relation to lighting, aviation lighting. As we'll come to later, it's not considered that the use of low-intensity infrared in aviation lighting would cause problems from the lighting. Comments have also been received about noise nuisance, but again, the mast has minimal moving parts and noise is not considered to be expected during operation. There'll be no regular human presence on the site other than for monitoring purposes. With regard to ecology and biodiversity, there are no statutory or non-statutory sites within 500 metres of the development site. There are, however, records of protected species within 500 metres. It is considered that there'll be no impact on priority and protected sites and habitats due to the distance of the site and the nature of the development. As I said before, the mast is on semi-improved pasture and does not impact any areas of deep peat. There are a number of priority bird species within 2 kilometres of the site, and NRW raised particular concerns about the curlew. Additional information was submitted, which the ecologist, additional information was submitted, and following that, NRW withdrew their objection. PCC ecologist is also satisfied that the proposed measures are acceptable. It's recommended that conditions be attached to ensure a nesting bird check is carried out prior to the start of construction. There's no habitat nearby suitable for bats, so impacts to bats are assessed as negligible. Public comments note that ecology surveys have not been submitted. The environment report does not rely on site-specific bird or bat survey data, and NRW have not requested such data. Therefore, these documents have not been required to determine the application. A third-party 20-year breeding bird survey has been submitted with an objection, and the Powys ecologist reviewed the objection. And as you saw in your report, his comments were included in the report. Given the comments from the ecologist, officers are satisfied that the findings of the 20-year survey have been fully and appropriately reviewed. As the mast is to be sited on agricultural pasture land, in terms of biodiversity enhancement, no green infrastructure will be impacted other than a minor area of the low ecological value grazed grassland. Therefore, it's not considered to be any loss of biodiversity that requires compensation. The site is within the River Wye Special Area of Conservation catchment, but it has been screened in accordance with NRW's guidelines and can be screened out as a development that does not increase the volume and phosphorus concentration of wastewater. NRW have also stated that they are satisfied there is unlikely to be a source of additional nutrients or a pathway to the river. There are public rights of way in the general vicinity of the proposed site, but none are directly impacted by the mast itself. Consideration is given to the impact upon aviation and the Senny Bridge training area. The Ministry of Defence have been consulted on the proposal and have confirmed that they have no objection subject to the inclusion of recommended conditions. The site is within a identified low-flying area as per the previous application, but the conditions that have been recommended by MOD are the same. Third-party comments have been received concerning the loss of dark skies and aviation safety, but the use of low-intensity infrared lighting, which is generally invisible to the human naked eye, means that the impact will be minimal. With regard to the historic environments, CADU have noted that there are 9 scheduled ancient monuments within 5 kilometres and 5 within 3 kilometres, but are satisfied that given the distances, there will be no adverse effect on any of the scheduled monuments. HENEB are satisfied that there are no obvious archaeological implications. With regard to minerals, the application site does lie within a mineral safeguarding area for sandstone category 2, but the development is not permanent in nature and only has a lifespan of 5 years, so it's considered that it will not prejudice the future winning of minerals. Finally, other third-party comments have been received that haven't been dealt with above, first being the potential of a subsequent wind farm proposal, as we've already discussed, it's not a consideration for this planning application, and should developers intend to make a proposal, they will need to seek planning permission to do so. And also the objections included objections to the wind farm proposal. So as this application relates to the meteorological mast, we don't take that into consideration. So in light of the above, Chairman, we recommend conditional consent.
Thank you. Diolch, Gath. Very, very comprehensive report again. Members, as stated earlier, we have no speakers, so I'm looking for the first person to indicate they wish to speak. Councillor Karina, please.
Thanks very much for that full report. I read the supplementary agenda last night. Can you hear me now? Yes. So that's a report submitted by the community, and they're worried about curlew habitat, but it appears NRW and our county ecologist isn't so worried. 800-metre buffer strip is mentioned. I wonder if the ecologist could give more detail. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you.
Jack. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the mitigation that's been put forward for this, which is a pre-commencement site walk over looking for nesting birds, and the bird deflectors is a industry standard mitigation for birds for this type of development. So we're satisfied that the mitigation that's been put forward for this is good enough.
Could I please come back on that? Didn't the community report suggest that there might be curlew breeding habitat within that 800-metre buffer, or is that 800-metre buffer not applicable because doesn't have moving parts? You know, it's not a turbine.
Jack, are you happy to respond to that, please?
Apologies, yeah, the 800-metre buffer is for wind turbines and not for this.
He's come back with another question. It's about the Brecon Beacon National Park, a planning authority. They've still got an objection outstanding. Is that because Powys has used a different methodology or visual impact assessment criteria?
The National Park are of the view that the proposal will have an adverse impact upon views out from the National Park. NRW's view is that there will not be an adverse impact, and as the statutory consultee, we attach greater weight to that of NRW.
Thank you. Diolch, Councillor Karina. Councillor Gareth Pugh and then Councillor Carl, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Am I right in thinking that the height of this mast is 122.5 metres?
Yes.
Am I right in thinking the MOD safeguarding have based their response on 117 metres?
When the application was received initially, there were discrepancies within the application material. There was reference to, was it the 117, but also to the 122.5, which is why we went back to the applicant and asked for clarification. They came back and clarified that it would be at a maximum of 122.5. And it was at that point, as I said earlier, that we carried out the second consultation, and MOD were part of that consultation. So they are fully aware that the height is 122.5.
Yeah, could I ask, where does it say that?
Yeah, just to clarify, I'll come in here. So the MOD in their comments dated the 15th of June in the officer's report. And just to extract, this is a full planning application for the erection of a temporary 122.5 metre meteorological mast. So they have referred to that in those comments of the 15th of June. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, you know, as we've been told, we can only look at what's in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Gareth. Councillor Carl, please.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Just draw your attention to page 69 of the report. It says the addition of the Met mast in this location has the potential, Mr. Chairman, the potential to introduce a physical obstruction to low-flying aircraft operating in this area. Again, in the conditions, there's no real information about the type of lighting that is proposed. It just says there's going to be lighting. It also says the national park, says there is a significant impact on visual impact there. I know that NRW say there isn't, but I can assure you with what's coming there will be a significant visual impact. I know we're not allowed to talk about it, but again, I find it frustrating, as we've previously talked about. You can choose to check this out, Chair, but I propose to go against Officer's recommendation for what I've already stated in the last application to do with the MOD low-flying aircraft. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carl. Noted. Yep, please.
You asked about the lighting. The condition that's condition 9 in this instance that the MOD recommend, it asks for the scheme, a lighting scheme. It says it has to include location and heights of all masts. It has to be identified the position of the lights on the mast, the type of lights that will be fitted, and the performance specification of the lighting types to be used. So if something unacceptable were to be submitted, then obviously the MOD would object to that.
But what I'm saying is, Chair, we haven't seen that detail, and I think that detail should be in the pack for us members to see. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you, Councillor Carl. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I remember rightly, we agreed that from the previous application that we're going to have further discussion with MOD around that previous application. Could I propose you have the same further discussions? Because I believe it's the same overarching company that's proposing these two developments.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Yes. Is that a legacy, Councillor Carl? Yeah. Where do we go now? Who wishes to add anything further? Members, I'm in your hands. I've had a proposal to go against officer recommendation. I've had no seconder for that. And Councillor David Salvi, please. You're on mute, Councillor Salvi.
I'm prepared to propose that we support officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Salvi. Councillor Carina.
I'm prepared to second Councillor David's proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Gareth Pugh, please.
Thanks, Chair. Did you say that Councillor Carl proposed to go against it?
Yes.
I'll second that. Thank you. I thought my hand was up before.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? In that case, I'm going to be swift on this for the same reasons as previously. I won't take the proposal to go against, and which was seconded, but it has been proposed and seconded by Councillor Selby and Councillor Carina to go with officer recommendation. If there are no further indications of wishing to speak, I will ask Jay to put that in the vote, please, in the chat box. Thank you. Are we looking? Has everyone been able to vote? No, who are we waiting on? Okay. Councillor Fleer, can you hear us? As you were in and a guest, you've been unable to vote. Are you comfortable either voting verbally, or if you prefer, please email myself or Jade now, whichever you're comfortable with.
That's fine. I'll vote for, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we have 4 votes for, 4 votes against, 0 abstentions.
Thank you. Just checking, Rachel, casting vote to the chairman, is that correct? Yeah, gotta be. Yeah. Members, it's not in the protocol about whether there's a casting vote for the chairman, but I'm 99% sure from previous committees when I originally joined that it was at the discretion of the chairman.
It is, Chairman. As a past chairman, it is.
It is. Thank you, Councillor Carl. In which case, I will go for the officer's recommendation, which is why I voted. So, thank you. That means that the application has been passed subject to conditions as per officer recommendation. Thank you all. Members, what's your wish? We've got three more applications. It's 1 o'clock. I know Gemma needs to leave us a quarter past. There's two speakers for the next one. So yeah. So are you happy that we keep going? Yeah, I'm just looking around the room. 5 minutes, yeah. Real quick, it'll be real quick 2-minute break. We have to do another roll call. But yeah, don't pick me up, please don't. Thank you.